Welcome back to FlatsClass University. In today's video, we're going to talk about better summer fishing. How many of you are plagued with grass on the surface of the water this time of year, or even in the middle of the water column? Everybody's out there. There's personal watercraft everywhere. Everyone who owns an outboard engine is probably running them in zones they shouldn't. And because of high water temps, you get a lot of grass on the surface, and it makes it doggone almost impossible to use artificials throughout the summer, especially if you like to throw these guys, hard baits. Okay, it's almost like you put these away and you only Texas rig. Well, there are some jig heads and some terminal tackle that will help you. So as you see here, I've drawn two different styles of jig heads, but they could even be Texas style jig heads. And what I mean by Texas style, something like the Pro Bullets, which we're going to talk a lot about in this one. But if you rig this style this time of year, there are some challenges with that grass. In fact, half of you that are buying the grass catcher here, and you can see a grass catcher jig head is any terminal tackle where the line tie sits away from the head of the jig. It creates a little notch here. It's almost like a 90-degree angle notch. That little notch catches every wet piece of grass in the water. And basically, it doesn't matter if you make a 150, 160 foot cast, because 20 feet into that retrieve, this thing is a grass bomb. Fact. But there are a lot of jig heads on the market that you can find that have this design where the actual line tie is integrated into, and I've got one here, it's integrated into the head of the jig. And when you do that, it allows that grass to shed right off the bait. So you can pull it through grass and snap it through, and instead of it grabbing more grass, it just falls away from it. So even though you might not be able to throw some of your favorite hard baits at certain times or certain places where you might be fishing, it's not the whole summer. There are plenty of times when you can throw those baits. But the jig head, which is always under tension, you're always reeling it or hopping it, these just catch grass like crazy. They're almost worthless this time of year unless you go to this more modern, more modified style jig head. And there are a number of brands out there that make options to be weedless. Z-Man has the Pro Bullets, but if you go onto sodiumusa.com or Tackle Warehouse, you can find a great jig head that integrates the line tie into the head. Now, we're going to jump over and show you some on-water action where I'm able to fish and negotiate in some pretty good grass flows, and then have the addition, especially with this tool here, to be able to throw fearlessly all the way up into the grass on the bank and into some of the little fine mangrove shoots that are sticking up, and be able to fish that stuff very effectively and never get fouled. Watch this, we'll be right back. Like I said in the intro, today we're going to be playing around with the Z-Man Pro Bullets a little bit, and you can see why. You see all this floating grass on the surface? Makes it really challenging to work a bait and keep it clean. So by utilizing the Pro Bullets, you've got a few things going for you. You've got a Texas rig basically, and you've got an integrated line tie that's in the head that doesn't have that little notch out there that always catches the grass. And it allows me, if I want to, just to bury the point inside the bait, so the point is not visible in the bait. When a fish bites it naturally, all I got to do is strike him hard enough and he's caught. And you can do that because Z-Man's Elastec is one of those compressible materials that allows you to fish through stuff like this and you don't have any problems at all. I mean, it's one of the best deals that they ever came out with. So I can work it through all this grass, and I really don't get hung up at all. So I'm relatively clean. If I was using an open jig head or maybe trying to work an EWG hook with a plastisol bait, one of the aggravating things about plastisol is it's not compressible like this material, okay? So you'd have to set that hook point up on top of the bait. And then we all know what happens. You get that little piece of grass that gets caught between the body of the bait and the hook point, and you're sitting there fiddling with that most of the day when you should be casting and looking for fish. And that's what we're doing today. We're going to show you how this Z-Man Pro Bullets is really an effective bait. Now, I might play around and throw a couple of different baits while we're out here today, because I'm kind of beating around the islands here looking for some viable options for this weekend's tournament that my wife and her friend Julie are fishing in. And we're supposed to have very, very tough weather, rain, wind. So I need to find out where these fish want to be so that I can just go there and really fish with confidence, or have them fish with confidence, knowing that these fish are going to be there. So that's what's on the docket for today. I'm definitely anticipating having a little bit of a sea breeze come. And when that sea breeze comes and starts to riffle up the surface, it will diffuse light. And, you know, at that point, we'll have a little bit more incoming tide. And it should help generate a couple of bites, I would think. Right now, I might have to fight for them a little bit with longer casts and, you know, a more slick retrieve. And what I mean by that is don't do any twitching. Just kind of make it a static roll. Make sure I'm making contact with the bottom, which I can do with this setup. It's really good. You know, this is 14-pound Soflex fluorocarbon, and I've got a piece of bite tippet here that I blood knotted on that is 30 pounds. So I've got just enough what I would call leader thickness. It's more about the diameter of the leader, that I feel comfortable if I do encounter a snook, I'll have a shot at landing him without him going through the leader material. So we'll see. All right, let's find a target. That's what we need. We need to find a target. I'm just reeling against the grain so you can get an idea how you can just shake the grass right off. It doesn't really get hung up on here at all. You can't do that with hardly any other tool. And this time of year, I am such an advocate of, you know, a lot of, oh, I love throwing topwater for my snook, or I love throwing the Mirrodine. Well, I do too. But in the summertime, this is the crap that you're dealing with. You're dealing with all this grass on the surface. And this bait here just kind of moves through it all so easy. And I just wanted to show you how, you know, cast after cast after cast. I mean, you can just shimmy this thing through here, and it really doesn't, you don't get fouled up. You don't get frustrated, you know. That's half of fishing. Oh, look at these tarpon right here. A couple of tarpon right here. Oh, man. 2 big tarpon. Now, never throw over their backs, but I do got fluorocarbon, so I figured I'd give it a try. Wow. Definitely undergunned. Shouldn't even do it. But you know how that is. Every fisherman thinks they can catch one. All right, let's get serious again. God dog it. They all ran. Dang it. Got him. Got him. Trying to steer him out of trouble. Got him on the hook here. Don't get behind my boat, dude. That's a nice snook. That is a nice snook. Let's see if I can get my net open. That is a nice fish. Let me get my other rod out of the way. Well, the benefits of being able to throw up there in the stuff. That is a nice snook. If I can get that line off him. All right. That is a beautiful fish. He's every bit of a slot. Nice. All right. Get him in the water and then we'll talk a little bit more about that bait. Just want to let him go. He was good enough to help me. Water's warm. There he goes. So, the trick to this is understanding how the fish want to position at different tide heights. And coming in here, I knew the most important thing was to be able to make presentations where they would swim with the tide. And that's why we were using the Pro Bullets. Now, this is something that I wanted to really play around a lot with, because I feel like when I'm fishing the ladies this weekend in this tourney, it's going to be something like this where they can feel confident throwing tight to those trees and not fouling up. If they can do that, throw up there, they'll pull those snook off there. A few years ago, we finished second with a 40-inch snook and a 33-inch snook. Now, that was a crazy year. I don't know if we could do that again, but I've got a feeling if they could get 232s and we could get a couple of nice redfish, round out with a couple of what I would call pedestrian-sized trout, they could again vie for master angler. So we're gonna play with this a little bit more, learn a few more spots in here for different tide heights, and let you guys see how even using a standard, this is the 4-inch diesel minnow, you know, the Elastec gives it so much action. I barely got to reel this thing. I threw that up there and it was floating down and a few snook came off the bank. And when I just barely started reeling it, this tail moves so easy because this stuff is so soft. And as soft as it is 10 times stronger than any plastisol bait out here. So you can use one bait, especially on this, all day long. And again, I'm throwing it just on a little piece of 30-pound bite tippet, and this is 14-pound fluorocarbon on the reel. And well, it's worked for me a million times in this environment where the water's crystal clear. You got no wind. I threw the Shadtron around a little bit today on the braid rod, but I didn't have any luck. I had a couple of redfish follow it, but I think I just need some more breeze, and I think I need a little bit more tide height. But let's go back. Pretty good stuff. you can see how effective the Pro Bullets actually works in that scenario. And why did I pick the Pro Bullets? Well, I'm trying to find something or some piece of terminal tackle that behaves like a jig head. It's weight forward, so it gives you that nice cast. The weight forward also gives you that nice quiet entry into the water, especially when you're throwing a bait caster low and you're pulling it back so it just sips right into the water. It also will achieve depth for me when I'm throwing ElaZtech material, which is very buoyant, so I have a little bit different depth control. And I was fishing in a lot of tide. Now that we're in the summertime, we got lots of sheet flow, so I want something that's a little bit more head weighted. But as you saw in the on-water action there, it's challenging, very, very challenging to throw in those environments where you have lots of floating grass on top of the water. And this time of year, you see a bunch of that. And it's a natural occurrence. It's nothing weird going on. It's just the way it is. But if you want better summer fishing, this is the time of year. Like in FlatsClass University, we have a bait of the month that our members compete with or do my lure challenges with. And there are certain things that they have to accomplish with those lures. When I get into June and July and August and September, I'm primarily promoting just Texas style baits that are rigged that way, because those are what is going to give the student body the best chance. The hard baits I will reserve for October and November and December and January and February and moving on. So this is the time of year where you want your soft baits to really perform for you. I'm not saying hard baits are out of the question. In many places you don't have the grass issue, or maybe there's a period in the tide where you don't have to worry about it as much. You're fishing backsides of islands. If any of you have watched me, you will always see a couple of rods laying on the deck. And that's why, oh, got an opportunity to throw a topwater through here or a big swim wedge tail through here with an open hook, and I'll do it. And then as soon as I get back where the grass is floating again, switch back to a T-rig, switch rods, because all of these techniques and tactics require different rods, different reel. You know, you've got to change things up. You know, when you start burying hooks in baits, now you're going to be using a faster action rod to make sure you get a positive hook connection. So that's a whole nother video we're not even going to talk about. But for summertime fishing, a couple of key points that you want to remember is definitely try to find some of these pieces of terminal tackle, whether they be open jig heads or EWG style jig heads that have this built-in head style where you can really see how that would shed grass. It doesn't protrude and catch the grass. 2, you want to fish in the direction of the flow. You want to come with the flow of grass. That's going to keep it clean, because if you go against it, you're just piling grass up on top of your lure. You're never going to have an opportunity. It's going to be really difficult. 3, you're going to want to pick your lanes with a lot of this floating stuff. Lots of times when I see big wads of it, instead of making giant long casts, I'll say, okay, instead of making that cast, let's make a more controlled 75, 80 foot cast. And that way I've got a lot better opportunity to keep that lure clean for a longer period of time, pick it up and then put it back in that spot again. Because those longer casts where that braid's floating on top of the water, that's a big reason why I like to use fluorocarbon in many of the scenarios that I do. But you're throwing that braid on top of the water, it's floating up on the top of the water. If you've got tons of it out there, it's just going to catch that grass. There's just no way around it. So those are a couple of tips for better summer fishing. If you're taking some positive stuff out of all these videos, you're putting it together, it's catching more fish for you, well then, please, I hope we've earned that thumbs up and you smashed the subscription button, because I'd love to have you here in my virtual classroom each and every day. I'll see you back here tomorrow. If you want to learn even more, come join me over there at FlatsClassUniversity.com. We go deeper and deeper into these same types of subjects that I have here on FlatsClass YouTube. See you then.